I'm sure it feels a little bit different.
Was as tough as the first time.
Just as tough. I like your honesty. So before we jump back in, you can just unmute and please feel free to ask any questions. So during the week, you had a chance to go through the poses that we learned last weekend and the classes that we've done as well. Are there any questions that you have for me now before we start, and anything else you would like me to focus on or recap, or anything you're feeling a little bit unsure of that we can just chat before we go? Sarah?
This might sound like a really silly question. Arm flexion and shoulder flexion, is that the same thing?
So basically you're always talking about the shoulder. So shoulder flexion, and then you wouldn't really have an arm because your arm is not a joint. So it would either be shoulder joint or elbow joint.
Okay.
So shoulder flexion, arm going up, shoulder extension, arm moving back. And then you could also talk about the elbow flexion and elbow extension. So it's always talking about the actual joint that's doing the moving.
Okay.
It is a good question.
Thank you.
The shoulder one is always a bit of a trick one, because we want to say extend your arm up, but it's actually shoulder flexion. And shoulder extension is your arm moving back. So I always say that one's like a little bit of a tricksy one you have to watch out for. Any other questions that came up for you guys during the week?
I have a question, Laura.
Yes, Candice.
While we're focusing now on sequencing and like putting together our own class and sequence and whatever, I'm sure we'll get there and all the pieces will fall into place. I just was wondering, in this class that you taught now, why we did the twists at the end with the legs.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, good question. So at the end, we just want to kind of relax and unwind the body. So at the end, we call that kind of like a counter pose. So often if we've done a lot of forward bending, we'll sometimes end with like a little baby back bend or a twist. So twist always quite nice just to neutralize spine. If we've done a whole lot of back bending, often then again, we'll do like a little gentle twist and maybe a soft forward bend to counter pose. So it's not necessarily there as part of your peak pose sequence. Once you've hit your peak pose, then you start moving towards your cool down. And basically your cool down is just about neutralizing the spine, first of all. Maybe a gentle twist to release the back. And then sometimes like the opposite movement from what you've been doing, depending on the pose.
Okay, yeah. That's what I was wondering, what the twist, if that was countering something else, or if it was just
to feel good.
Okay. It did feel good.
I guess it's also for me like a bit of a personal preference. I really like unwinding that way. I just feel it's really nice to just twist on the ground a little bit before Shavasana. So I guess it's also like your own personal preferences, what you tend to do in your practice. Sometimes we bring that into our classes as well.
Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions to do with poses? Anything else that's been worrying you? Anything you want to check in before we continue?
Yeah, I got a quick question for pigeon pose. Do you try to flex the foot of the front leg?
So Anna, it depends on if it feels good for you. Normally in pigeon, we'll have the foot just a bit relaxed and slightly more in a pointed kind of position. Yeah. But if a flex helps, that feels more comfortable. For me, the biggest thing in pigeon is my ankle bone gets so sore if I'm especially flexing the foot. For some people really like the flexing of the foot. It can feel like a little bit more stable for some. But naturally in that pose, it's just going to kind of be a relaxed foot in pigeon, unless you're doing it because it feels better for any particular reason.
Okay, cool.
It doesn't make too much difference. So often you may have heard like flexing the foot helps to protect the knee, but it doesn't really. It may just feel a little bit more comfortable or a little bit more stiffer and stable for you, and some people like that. Other than that, it's not really going to do much, not change much what's going on in the hip.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, but we're all different, and that's always a great thing to explore. What feels good for you?
Laura, if you have someone, how will you modify it if it's hurting somebody's knee?
So if in pigeon pose, it is hurting someone's front knee, which is quite common. Sorry, Sarah, you're breaking up a little bit there.
Hurt people's knee.
Yes. So in pigeon, sometimes it can feel like a little bit of a niggly pose. Are you still with us, Sarah? You've frozen there. Type in the chat box if you're still with us, Sarah.
Sorry, no, I was.
You are here. You're just frozen. Okay. So in pigeon, the reason why the knee can be sore is because of, first of all, the bend in the knee, but because you're adding load. Did Sarah just pop off? Oh, there she is. Okay, you're back. Because of load, especially when you forward fold in pigeon pose, you're leaning forwards and you're adding more load onto your front knee. And the load is often what makes it feel sore or uncomfortable, because load changes everything, as we're slowly starting to realize, right? So a great thing to do, Sarah, to help take load off the knee. Remember we chatted when we did the pigeon, and we'll talk more about it this weekend as well, is sitting a block underneath your bum cheek of your pigeon leg. And what that does is puts more load onto the pelvis rather than forwards onto the knee. And you'll find pretty much it sorts out the pose mostly for everyone, which can be a great one. Another thing, if you don't have block, is just to sit off onto your right bum cheek. So your pelvis would be not so straight, but that would also take the load off the front knee and put it more through the bum and the pelvis rather than forwards. And forward folding can make it much worse. So we'll chat more about it when we do hip openers, but where your arms are flat out in front of you in pigeon and you're basically like lying your face on the floor, you're adding a lot of load on that front knee. If you've got your elbows on the mat and you're pushing down a little bit more, you're reducing that load. And being upright with your fingertips to your sides, almost in a little back bend, you've shifted that load completely back. So that can also change the whole experience in pigeon. But the block underneath the bum is pretty much my go-to pose, because pigeon can be a bit sticky for knees, definitely. It's a great question and something we will chat more about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank
Laura,
you.
can I ask you, with the homework, with the second one, a lot of the questions are based on, you know, what the movements are, the flexion and extension, abduction. Are we still going to be going through that this weekend?
So you watch those videos of Catherine's, and in those she mostly covered the flexion and extension for the hip and shoulder. But what we'll do, Dasha, is in the classes, because Carmel also just commented on it, I'll discuss it more in the poses so that you can really feel what's going on and just get familiar with it. So with flexion and extension are your main two movements you want to feel comfortable with. We do that, those are your biggest movements. They kind of bring our body into our largest ranges of movement. So you want to be quite comfortable firstly with flexion extension. That's pretty much the biggest one. Okay. And then the other one's less so. So let's chat about it quickly now if you want, just as a little recap, seeing as we're recapping poses. How does that sound? Good? Okay, so let's start off basically with our elbow. Okay, so flexion, a good way to remember flexions is the bones come together. Generally, flexion, things come together, and extension, things move apart. So that's also a nice way to try and remember it, okay? So if I were to do elbow flexion, the bones are coming closer together. And then if I were to do elbow extension, the bones are moving away from each other. So that's kind of my helpful tip. Okay. Then what is shoulder extension, where the bones move away from each other? Shoulder extension. Remember, this is always the trick one. Arm moving back, right? It's moving away from you. Okay. And then shoulder flexion, which is great because it's always the opposite, is arm up. And we talk a lot about shoulder flexion because in yoga, we take our arms up a lot. Okay, so shoulder flexion, and it's quite a big movement for our shoulder. Then let's talk about our spine. If I was to do spinal flexion, what am I doing with my back? Coming closer together. Yes. We're rounding and we're forward bending. Absolutely. And if I was to do spinal extension, bones moving apart, then we're moving into back bends, right? So forward bends, shoulder, spinal flexion, back bends, spinal extension. Does that make sense so far? So you can see flexion and extension are our big movements, and these are the ones you want to feel pretty happy with. Okay, let's move down to the hips. Okay, if I wanted to do hip flexion, where I'm bringing the bones, the joints closer together, what movement is hip flexion? Yes, so Candace is lifting her leg. Yeah, or bending your knee into your chest. Okay, hip flexion, I'm bringing my thigh bone and my hip bone closer together in hip flexion. Where else do we do hip flexion? Because we can also come down to our legs, right?
Forward bending.
Exactly. So when I forward bend in standing or seated, I'm forward bending into hip flexion as well as spinal flexion. Does that make sense? So whenever we forward fold or bring your knee to your chest or do anything where we're folding from the hip, which we do a lot of in yoga, and we did a lot of it in our sequence today. So in pyramid pose, we're doing hip flexion, folding forwards. We're coming closer to our front thigh. Make sense? And then what is hip extension? The opposite.
Back foot in pigeon, back leg in pigeon.
Back leg in pigeon pose. Anything when your leg is moving away from you, moving backwards. So in Warrior 3 tonight, our back leg was moving backwards and away from us into hip extension. And we do that a lot when we do back bends and whenever our leg is behind us, even in a lunge. So a lunge is a great example of hip flexion and extension because one hip is in flexion, right? I'm coming to the leg, and my one leg is in hip extension, moving back behind you. So this is that scissoring action of the legs. Okay. Then what is knee flexion? Knee flexion. How can I bring the bones closer together in flexion? Bending the knee, right? And knee extension would be a straight leg, extending the knee. Okay. So those are your biggest movers, all right? Flexion and extension, okay? And then, so let's combine a few. Okay, turn on your mics and I want you to all shout, okay?
Laura, can I ask, so do we, like what you just showed us the high lunge, do we have to describe the right hip separately and the left hip separately? That's
exactly, because they're doing two different movements. Yes.
The other question I have, do we also have to say if it's like for example, an eagle pose, it's a flexion of a hip and it's also adduction? Do we have to
Yes,
say
very clever. Nice.
So do we have to say both?
Yeah. Because you can have more than one joint action occurring at the same time. So this is what I'm gonna put myself in a position and you're gonna shout what's happening. Okay? So if I'm standing with my knee into my chest, my hip is in
Flexion.
and my knee is in.
Flexion.
Yes, we've got more than one joint action happening at a time, right? If I take my leg back, my hip is in,
Extension.
my knee is in, flexion, and my shoulder is in what?
Extension.
Extension.
Absolutely, you've got it. Okay, if I'm in a high lunge, my front leg is in, my front hip is in,
Flexion.
flexion,
Flexion.
my
Flexion.
knee is in,
Flexion.
Flexion.
flexion, my back hip is in,
Extension.
Extension.
my back knee is in,
Extension.
extension, my shoulder is in,
Flexion.
Flexion.
my elbow is in,
Extension.
Extension.
So can you see how we broke down those poses into flexion and extension? So there's lots of that occurring in one pose, especially when two legs are doing something different. Okay, so those are your main ones. Just get comfortable with those. And then of course we have external rotation, right? When do we have external rotation? And then I'll come to you, Raquel. In what sitting pose do I have my legs in external rotation?
Butterfly.
Pigeon again.
Butterfly pose, absolutely, and pigeon pose. Yeah. So when I'm in pigeon, let's break this down. In pigeon, my hip is doing two things. What is it doing?
Rotating and flexion.
External rotation and flexion. Flexion. Because my thigh is closer towards me in flexion, right? And my back leg in pigeon is, my hip is doing extension, and my knee is in
Extension.
okay. So we can also sometimes have that rotation in our poses as well. And those are the ones that we use the most. Okay, those are our big moves. Of course, we also have abduction and our legs are apart, right? When I stand with my legs like this, abduction, moving away from me, like being abducted, okay? Moving away from the midline of the body, okay? And we mostly just have this when our legs are in our standing poses, right? So if I do a wide-legged forward fold, my legs are abducted and I'm folding forwards, which means my hips are doing
Flexion.
Flexion.
okay. With those ones, less important than your flexion and extension, you're going to use those the most. And then you'll see sometimes you have a bit of external rotation and a few other bits as well. Does that feel a bit more comfortable, Dasha?
Yes, thank you so much.
It's always good to put it in movement. We're all movers. We're all here because we love movement. We love yoga. So for me, I understand something when I put it into my body. Then it makes sense. Raquel, you have a question?
I'm not sure if I can even formulate a question from it. I'm kind of just like, how do I make this
Just go for it.
So I'm trying to understand the connection between, anterior and posterior tilting, and how it can kind of stretch or lengthen. I would say, or I don't know, maybe See, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm still like in my head thinking I figured it out. But
No, anatomy is very, very complex. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. So most of the time, we're more anterior tilting in yoga than we are posterior tilting. Okay. So we use the anterior tilt a lot. Okay.
So if you're posterior tilting in, I don't know, let's say pigeon, or something, or like a lunge even, if you're just kind of for some reason doing something weird like that, is that kind of like cheating in a sense, like cheating a pose?
It's just another way of doing it. So what tends to happen when I'm going to say tuck tailbone, so we all know what we're talking about, okay? So if I were to tuck my tailbone in a lunge, what that tends to do is going to pull me out of the back bend, okay, and reduce the range of movement. Okay. So if I'm in a lunge, normally, and you probably guys also saw a bit of this in Jenny Rowling's video, when I'm going into a big low lunge, I'm allowing for an arch in my back, and I'm allowing for the anterior tilt in my pelvis. If I wanted to tuck my tailbone, posterior tilt, it's going to make me reduce the back bend, reduce the range of movement. And it's just a different way of doing the pose. A lot of the time, we don't need to always tuck in a pose. A natural pelvis is cool, and you want to let your body just move in the way that you're moving. We don't really posterior tilt a lot in yoga unless we're rounding the spine. Unless I'm doing something where I want to do like crow pose. And remember, always a helpful tip with the pelvis, because anterior and posterior tilt can get very confusing. The pelvis moves with the spine. So just as you're all sitting here, if you round your spine, what happens to your pelvis? It tucks, it posterior tilts, right? And if you arch your spine and sit in a back bend, what happens to your pelvis? It tilts forwards, right? You sit forwards on your bum cheeks and you're in an anterior tilt. So you can get into the nitty gritty, but overall, your pelvis and your spine move together. If you're in a back bend, you're going to be anterior tilting, okay? And if you're trying to get really round and compact in your spine for something like crow, then you're going to posterior tilt. It gets very complicated as well. There's more to this where I'm not going to get into it. And we talk more about it on our 300-hour teacher training, because it can get quite complex and quite confusing, and you don't even need to worry about it. But it's good to start thinking this way, and it's very exciting. Did we kind of answer your question there?
Yeah. I was also like, it was making my mind kind of open up to other stuff also, and I was just like, keep it inside for a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's quite interesting though how you can get more of an extension from something as simple as like where your pelvis sits. It's just insane. Like,
it's amazing.
So
Our
much to
body
think
is
about.
so amazing. Absolutely. It can change everything. And we can use that to our advantage if we want our students to feel that little change, like to be more upright in a lunge, to feel more stretch in the front of their hip flexor, because we want that. Or we can get finer adjustments within the exact same pose, can be done completely differently, just in a tiny little refinement like that. And it's very exciting, and it also can be very complicated, but we love this kind of stuff. And our 300-hour course is basically all about this. Okie dokie. All right, I'm just checking in with Sarah's question. When we do our pose analysis, is that how we would go through them? Exactly. We would go through each 3 poses in detail and see which part the body is doing. Yes, absolutely. So pose analysis and breaking down a pose is basically what I just did for you now. Put myself in a position and you break it down into little what's happening in the body. Then you would take it a little bit further and go, okay, what muscles are stretching? What muscles are contracting? So you would take it a little bit further than that, Sarah. And then you would look at your body and go, okay, so if my hamstrings, okay, well, let's say my quad is stretching in this lunge. And then I look at my body, what is happening there? Is my quad tight? Do I feel restriction? Or am I really flexible? How does that change how I do the pose? So then you would analyze your own body in the pose as well. And then go, oh, actually, I have very limited range of movement in this, so I struggle with this pose. Or I need to work on my hamstring flexibility because I feel my hamstrings are restricting me from doing this pose. So you slowly start to understand what is actually going on in the pose. After you've broken it down into joints, muscles, and then you just have a look at what's happening in your body. Or sometimes it can be like, oh, my arms are really short, so I struggle to do this. Or my legs are really long, so it's a longer lever, so I struggle in Warrior 3 because my back leg is so long and heavy. Okay.
Awesome. Laura, when we were exercising, can I ask you, when we were exercising, when we were doing a forward bend, you said the hamstring is contracting and extending at the same time.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you said something, it's an eccentric movement.
Yes,
right?
You're right. You're right. So when the hamstring in a slow forward fold like that, like we were going down into our forward fold with our arms overhead, we're doing it slowly, and because our arms are up, we've added load. Okay, so we're making the muscles have to work. It's like lifting up a weight, right? Okay, so then when we slowly fold like that with weight, think about holding heavy water bottles and then slowly folding forwards. Your hamstring muscles at the back are having to contract a little bit so you don't just fall over, right? But at the same time, they're stretching because you're moving forwards into a forward fold into hip flexion. So we call that an eccentric muscle contraction. And I'm sure you saw the example when you watched the videos. The biceps are a great example of that. When you're holding something heavy and you're straightening your arm, you can feel the muscles still working, even though it's lengthening at the same time. Whereas if you just bend, it shortens, it contracts in a shortening way, and it also contracts in a lengthening way. Okay, so it's just basically understanding that muscles contract both ways. And that's the lesson in that. And it's really good to strengthen muscles in a lengthened way in yoga. It's cool and it's good for them. That's the lesson in that. Sounds very complicated, but we know muscles also contract when they're stretching, and it's good for them. That's all.
So what is the opposite of eccentric?
Then concentric.
Concentric, okay.
Concentric, and the muscle shortens in a contraction. Okay. I'll try and bring in some of these terms while we're going through all the poses. Okie dokie. Candace, are you talking about your question at the top of the chat? Let me just see. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
so
can you hear me? I can actually just ask you.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have to do so much reading. So everyone can hear as well.
Yeah, sorry, my connection was going a bit wonky earlier. I've been quite sick this week, so my balance is just completely just shit. So my question is, how do you modify someone who just like cannot balance at that point?
And it
because
is a big thing,
you can use blocks to help stretch, but how do you balance without like
so Candace, you can make use of a wall, which is a fabulous way to first develop balance. So sometimes if you're teaching people completely new to yoga, or you have a group of people that really struggle with balance, get them against a wall. They can face the wall and just start to feel balance, and then one hand against the wall. And then it's a skill. So balance is a skill that needs practice, and it is hard at first. And this is why we start off with pretty straightforward balancing like tree pose. And in tree pose, you could have the foot lower down towards the ankle, so that's there to quickly catch you if you lose your balance. So it's something that needs to be practiced and refined, and making use of a wall is fantastic if someone's really struggling, just to build that initial ankle strength and getting used to balance. And basic balances like tree pose with the leg lower down also is really helpful, but it is hard. And it's also fine if you lose your balance. It's all part of the process. Okay. And then we bring in more complicated balances like Warrior 3 and Half Moon, where you got legs and arms floating all around, really challenging the balance. So that's why yoga is so good, because it really works our balance, and it's hard. And the more time you spend balancing, the better it gets. So students that I have that struggle, I say, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, balance on one leg. When you're boiling the kettle, balance on one leg. The more time you spend balancing, the better it gets. It's a skill that needs refining. And if you're on a carpet and your mat is all squishy, a thick mat, much, much harder. So that is why your yoga mats are fairly thin for balance, where Pilates mats and things like that are much thicker, because you're not having to stand on one foot as much. So also the surface that you're on makes a huge, huge, huge difference, especially now you're all doing yoga at home. Carpets make it tough. Okay, so let's warm our bodies back up again. Let's go through a basic sun salutation. I'm just going to briefly touch on this, and then I'll cover it again tomorrow. A basic sun salutation is what we've been doing in our classes. So I'm going to start in Tadasana, mountain pose, arms up, high mountain, and I forward fold. Okay, forward fold, your arms can come up to the side or in front, unless you specify like I did today. In our forward fold, hands in line with feet. As you know, knees can be a little bent, back of the neck is relaxed. I'm going to pop my hands on the floor, step back into a plank position, strong, straight, active arms and legs, and push back into downward dog. Okay. To end off, I can walk to the top of the mat, this is really nice for beginners. You don't have to step or jump or anything. I end off the same way I came in. So I move straight into a halfway lift. Then I forward fold. So it's the reverse. And back up to standing in high mountain. And back to mountain pose Tadasana. So in this sun salutation, I'm not doing chaturangas. I'm just building initial strength in plank. So you can hold plank a little bit longer for your beginners. And learning to transition into downward dog with that nice strong push of the hands like you guys have been doing. So let's start off basic sun salutation. Standing in the top of your mat, Tadasana mountain pose. Be aware, socks make things slippery, so if you can bear it, socks off. So you stand at the front of your mat, Tadasana feet together, palms facing forwards, chest is lifted. Shoulder blades lightly together and down. Broaden your collarbones and lift your chest. Arms up, inhale for high mountain. Reach up through your arms, reach through your fingertips, feel the length in the sides of your body. A nice slow forward fold. As you come forwards, arms can come out to the sides or in front of you as you slowly come down. Come down with a straight back and then fold head down. Hands in line with feet, good habit. Back of the neck is relaxed. Legs straight or a little bit bent if hamstrings need a little bit of a bend. Okay. Hands to shins, halfway lift. Straighten your back here. Press your chest forwards, but don't scrunch your neck as you look too far ahead of you. Neck in line with spine. Bend your knees, put your hands on the floor, step back into plank. You could alternate right leg, left leg if you wanted to, depending on what you're teaching. In plank, spread your fingers. Strong straight arms. Thighs pressing away from the floor. Don't let your head drop. Gaze slightly forwards to the front of your mat. Take a breath. Slow, strong push into downward dog. So we're developing that initial strength in our triceps and our arms as we transition from plank into downward dog, and we're not stepping our feet in. Plank and downward dog are the same distance. In our downward dog, what is the most important thing? Hips up. So if you need to bend your knees a little bit and point your hips higher to the ceiling, then do so. If you're ready to straighten your legs, go for it. Your ears are roughly in line with your upper arm, so watch that you're not dropping forwards in your chest. Push the mat away and feel some strength in your arms and your shoulders. Good. Gaze to the top of the mat and let's slowly walk forwards because we're doing a beginner's sun salutation. Walking forwards is the most accessible way to get back to the top of the mat. Feet land in between your hands, so walk all the way to the top. Hands to shins, halfway lift. We do it in reverse. Halfway lift, inhale. Press chest forwards, lengthen spine. Exhale, forward fold. So you come up the same way you entered. Then you rise up to standing high mountain, arms reach up. Truly reach up. Lengthen through the sides of your body, reach. Arms down to your sides, Tadasana, mountain pose. Okay, and come have a seat. Okay, so that is your most accessible way to teach your beginners the sun salutation, okay? Because stepping forwards is not easy, okay? Stepping forwards is tough. Dasha, your dog is so cute. She's staring into the camera watching us. It's so cute. Okay, does that make sense? And you can feel we haven't brought in the chaturanga just yet because generally our beginners can't even hold plank. So we're first teaching plank and then downward dog, and then I'll show you the next version. Any questions before we continue? Julie and then Sarah.
When you're in halfway lift, I know we've done about 1,000 of these and I don't know why it's only just occurred to me, but are your shoulders coming forwards or are you supposed to be pulling them back?
Drawing them back, Julie. So in your halfway lift, you're pressing chest forwards, broad collarbones, and it's almost like a little bit of a back bend. Your spine may even slightly concave. So your shoulder blades are drawing down and a little bit together. And we're building back strength in that. It's kind of that awareness of how to lengthen your spine for forward bends and things later on. So shoulder blades drawing together and down, chest is lifting. Back muscles active and on. Good question.
Thanks. Another thing I have to like relearn because I think I got into the habit of just like having my shoulders forward.
Then what's going to happen when you move into a forward bend later on or a pyramid pose, your shoulders are going to want to do the same thing. So we're creating that awareness of lift and length in a forward fold. Before then we fold head down. Then your back rounds, of course. Sarah?
I've always wondered this, the sun salutation, is that like is that a Sept yoga in general? Are you losing me?
Yeah, I got you. I got your question. So the sun salutation stems from Ashtanga yoga, which is a set sequence. And Ashtanga yoga, and then you had a kind of, is a set sequence, and Vinyasa is a branch of Ashtanga yoga. Okay, so Ashtanga yoga, there's a 7 series. It's very advanced, it's very hectic. And they always start with 5 sun A's and 5 sun B's. And then we kind of taken the poses that we know from Ashtanga and we brought it into our own choreography in Vinyasa yoga. So not all styles of yoga do sun salutation. It's more flowy styles of yoga that use the sun salutation to transition and link poses. So in Vinyasa, we're not restricted to do a sun salutation in the exact same way every time. We can do just plank into downward dog. We can do a chaturanga. We don't have to do a set sequence, but we kind of use it to link and flow into other poses. And that's just the nature of this style of yoga in Vinyasa. Other styles like Hatha yoga, not necessarily do a sun salutation every time. Iyengar yoga, not very common to do sun salutations in either. Kundalini yoga, no sun salutations. So it just depends on the style. Alrighty, and vinyasa is probably the most common form of yoga, so you've probably done it in most classes you've gone to. Okay. So next I'm going to teach you one level up. So kind of, I call this one an intermediate sun salutation. So we starting to talk about chaturanga, starting to move a little bit more, strengthening into triceps, okay? And bringing in a baby back bend. So I'll show you very quickly and then you can do it yourself. Okay, so I start the exact same way. Tadasana, mountain pose, arms up, high mountain or hastasana, forward fold, uttanasana. These can be a little bent, halfway lift. So my chest is open, shoulders are down, and you don't want this going on, scrunching in the neck. Neck in line with spine. Hands to the mat, stepping back into plank. From my plank now, I'm going to bring my knees to the ground. So here it's important to feel a kneeling plank position. So my shoulders, hips, and knees on one straight diagonal line. Can you see that? Okay. And it's going to feel like you're in plank. Your tummy, your core will feel active. I'm going to look forwards. The key to chaturanga is you need to move forwards, okay? If I go straight down, what happens? You get this horrible shape, which it's sometimes encouraged in classes, which I disagree with, because you want to build strength in your arms. So none of this chin, chest, tummy, or what do they say? Okay. So from my kneeling plank, I'm going to look forwards. I'm going to move forwards. And as I bend my arms to lower down through chaturanga, I'm going to lean forwards over my wrists. And now I'm getting a sense of chaturanga, but in a kneeling position. So you're going to feel that moving forwards. Of course, in chaturanga, just as you are now, elbows bent into your sides, palms forward, sit like this, and just feel it in a seated position. As you lower, your elbows brush into your ribs, your chest opens, shoulder blades draw down, again, Julie, like your halfway lift as you lower down. Okay, so from plank, knees to the ground, look forwards, lean forwards. Bend my elbows to the sides, collarbones broaden as I lower as one. My hips, tummy, chest land together. If you've landed with your bum in the air, it's because you haven't moved forwards in chaturanga. So that's going to be a very different sensation and it's hard. Okay. We point the toes and I'm going to do a baby cobra pose. We'll chat more about this tomorrow. In cobra, visualize your hands drawing down. So my hands aren't actually moving, but I'm drawing my hands towards the ribs. I'm not scrunching the neck in line with spine. And again, shoulder blades are drawing together and down, and I'm strengthening my upper back. Slowly release. We do a reverse chaturanga back to kneeling. Strong arms, tuck toes, downward dog. And maybe here I incorporate the step forwards. Remember, the trick to stepping forward is to move your hand out the way. So if you tend to do like a little roundhouse kick, that's perfectly fine. We end the same way. We come in reverse, halfway lift, forward fold, up to standing, and Tadasana. Okay, let's give it a go. The big takeaway here is the kneeling chaturanga, moving forwards, body lowers as one. Stand in Tadasana at the top of your mat, palms facing forwards, chest lifted. Inhale, arms up, high mountain, hastasana, reach up. This is shoulder flexion. Slowly forward fold into uttanasana, hip flexion, spinal flexion. Relax the back of your neck. Inhale to a halfway lift, hands to shins. Now feel your shoulder blades drawing a little bit together and down, collarbones broad. Can you feel upper back muscles are on? Hands to the mat, step back, plank. From your plank position, lower your knees to the ground. Pause here, look forwards. Your hips come down a little bit so you feel a kneeling plank position. So Hader, you need to go back into plank and then bring your knees down, not too close towards you, just straight to the floor. Yes, then you lean forwards, look forwards. Now slowly, in 10 seconds, you're going to lower as slow as you possibly can. As you begin lowering, squeeze your elbows to your sides and now look forwards, move forwards, go past your fingertips, go forwards, 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 forwards. Can you feel the difference? You should lower down as one onto your belly. Your hips, your chest, your shoulders should have come down together. Let's try that again. Push back to plank. Okay, it's all about moving forwards. From plank, bring your knees to the ground. Look forwards. Move forwards. As you lower through chaturanga, move forwards the whole time. Squeeze your elbows to your ribs. Go forwards, forwards, forwards. Your hips, your chest, everything comes down together. Can you feel the difference? Point your toes. Inhale, cobra curl. Little baby cobra. So you don't have to curl up too high there, Amy. Baby cobra. Imagine your hands are dragging back on the mat. It's a really nice activation for your shoulders and your arms. Can you feel that? Don't scrunch your neck, neck in line with spine. Softly release. Now do an opposite to chaturanga. Push back to kneeling with strength without collapsing into your back. Push. Then tuck toes, downward facing dog. Can you see you haven't had to move your feet the whole time? This is why plank, downward dog are the same distance. Step your right foot forwards to the top of the mat. Move your right hand out the way so you step forwards high enough. Yes. Left foot joins the right foot. Straight away, inhale, halfway lift. Hands to shins, press chest forwards. Exhale, forward fold, head down. Rise up to standing, high mountain. Reach up. Arms to your sides, Tadasana, mountain pose. Well done, come have a seat. So hopefully you felt chaturanga, maybe you've been doing this all this time, maybe not, but chaturanga and all arm balances are about looking forwards and moving forwards. So this is where we teach the fundamental component of arm balancing, which chaturanga is. It's an arm balance about moving forwards. Could you feel the difference in that kneeling chaturanga? Arms felt worked. Should have felt quite hard.
What a lazy pose.
Alicia, what was that?
It made it feel like not a lazy pose because normally, yeah.
I see the most shocking chaturangas in classes, and we don't want to cheat students from their chaturangas because this is where you're building strength in your arms for bigger arm balances and poses where you need lots of arm strength. It's important.
Laura, so even a full chaturanga, it's also your hands are not under your shoulders. They're also going to go more in the middle.
Correct.
Sure.
Depending on your body proportions, but yes, because you move forwards like that, they come into what we call a chaturanga shape, where you got that kind of, your elbows are in line. You've got this 90-degree kind of action, which we use when we do side crow and other arm balances later on. We use this chaturanga arm position a lot. So yes.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So we'll practice those a little bit more in the class, in the classes tomorrow. And I'll show you the full version tomorrow where we do full chaturanga and full upward facing dog. Okay. We're just going to leave it at that. So we've learned a beginner sun salutation and what I call like an intermediate sun salutation where we're bringing in teaching how to do chaturanga and a baby back bend. And you can start practicing that. You will be doing that in your assessment. Julie.
Just a very random question. I find it easier to do up dog than it is to do cobra, baby cobra. The smaller the cobra, I find it like actually quite hard. Is that normal?
It's so different. So cobra pose and baby cobra is actually more strengthening for your back. Your back muscles are having to contract more, interestingly enough. So this is why I quite like it for beginners, because you're strengthening your back, which is so important. It's something we really don't think about doing. We're upward facing dog, because you're in a big back bend, your arms are straight, you kind of just hang in a back bend. Your back muscles aren't working, you're kind of dumping in your lower back. So in that way, it is easier. It's a bigger range of movement, but there's less muscles working, at least in your back, for your lower back.
I can feel that,
Yeah. So that's maybe what you're feeling there, Julie. Yeah, important to have strong back muscles. Any other questions with those sun salutations? Please practice those kneeling chaturangas, especially if you feel like your arms maybe aren't the strongest and you're still working on wrist strength. And we're on our hands and our arms a lot in yoga. So practice that, especially nice, slow 10-second lowering is what we will be doing in your assessment, heads up. So practice those, that you can do a nice, slow, lower chaturanga, either kneeling or full, which I'll teach you, but we're just going to work progressively. Okay. Alrighty, now that we're feeling a little bit warmed up, I want to go through some of the most important poses, because we don't have tons of time, that we did last weekend. So the standing poses. Okay, so let's first talk about the poses with external rotation. So we're going to do warrior 2, side angle pose, and triangle pose. We're going to link them all together because they have the same foot positioning. Turn to the side of the mat. They all have external rotation, but they're all a little bit different in their own way. So I'll do a quick recap for you, and then we'll do it again, and just to check in how this week has gone and if you have any questions. So the big takeaway with these poses was getting the external rotation in our front leg. And with that, our natural hip position. So I know a lot of you have been practicing that, and I've got some awesome messages going, oh my God, it's changed everything. So just really focusing on those bits. Okay, so once again, I'm going to come from my plank into downward dog, because this is the distance I'm always working with. I take a step forwards and ground the back heel. So mic's on, so you can shout at me from there. What are my feet doing here? My front heel is in line with what of my back foot?
Arch.
Your arch. The back foot, yes. My front foot is turned out 90 degrees, so my toes are pointing forwards. My back foot can be turned in slightly or parallel, whatever feels good for you. Okay, I'm applying natural hip position. So my hip is pointing pretty much on a little bit of a diagonal here. And then I'm going to move into my warrior 2. What am I looking at? Well, firstly, my front knee here. What do I want going on in my knee?
Knee flexion.
Knee flexion, you're right. And I want my knee to be in what position here? In line with what?
Align with your foot.
In line with my ankle, stacked over my ankle. Yeah. And my thigh, what placement would I like my thigh in?
Parallel to the floor.
Parallel to the floor, absolutely. And then I'm actively doing what with this thigh?
Externally rotating.
Externally rotating, absolutely. So that is meant, because this leg is externally rotating, my hips are doing what?
Position.
Natural hip position. Natural hip position. Okay. My back leg is doing what? What am I thinking of in my back leg? What shape, what is happening with my knee? Anatomically, joint stuff?
Extension.
Extension, yeah. And I want to press a little bit into my back foot. So I'm not rolling forwards on the arch of my foot, but pressing down through the outer edge of the foot, the baby toe side of the foot. Now, what am I doing with my shoulders? Where do I want them placed in warrior 2? This is what I always see.
You want to stack them on top of your hip.
I want to stack my shoulders above my hips. So I need to lean back. And that also transfers more weight into my back leg. Okay, my arms are doing what?
Lengthening, extending.
So they are abducting, they're reaching away from me. That's not important though. Where do I want them placed?
Horizontal.
Horizontal,
Level.
arms in line with shoulders. And where am I looking? Where's my drishti?
Front, middle finger.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good. Okay, so from there, I can move into side angle pose. My modified version is with my elbow on my thigh. What do I need to watch in modified side angle? What tends to happen with this arm and shoulder?
You
Dump down.
lean, dumping onto your knee.
Yes. So I need to press down through my forearm and keep that shoulder away from the ear. What do I do with this arm?
Sweep it down and then
Down and over.
up alongside your ear.
Yes. Good. So we're looking for this side angle line. This is why it's called side angle pose. In the full version, what am I doing with my bottom hand?
Fingertips.
On the fingertips to keep a sense of lift in the chest. And then what am I doing with my chest? What am I activating? What am I trying to open here?
Spinal rotation.
Yes, I'm going to twist my chest towards the side. So I'm not dropping in the chest because then the arm won't go back, right? I need to turn through my ribs and my chest to open up. Okay. Lastly, triangle pose. So when I move into triangle, hips are natural. My knee now is in extension. As I move into triangle, my hip is doing two things. What is it doing?
Flexion.
Flexion and what else?
External rotation.
And rotation.
External rotation, absolutely. So I'm going to reach to the side. When I'm reaching to the side, what am I thinking of doing with my torso?
Lengthening, keeping it long.
What are my options with my hand here?
Shin, ankle, floor.
You can hold it on your shin, or you can hover, or you can put it.
Absolutely. Depending on my hamstring flexibility, I might be upright a little bit more. So you stay more lengthened in the spine. I might have the shin to the ankle, or if very happy, maybe hand onto the floor. As long as my chest isn't doing this. Okay. So now what am I thinking of doing with my shoulders?
Pulling them back.
Squaring your shoulders
Leaning
off.
back.
Leaning back maybe slightly so that your shoulders are over your bottom shin. Then lastly here, what I want to do with my shoulders when they open up.
Stack them on top of each other.
Yes, stack them on top of one another and watch your bottom shoulder tends to roll forwards. So you really want to roll that shoulder back and down. What we don't want in a triangle is this. Can you see how my ribs are shortening? If my triangle is doing this, what am I doing wrong?
You're bending from the wrong part of your body. You should be bending from your hips.
Yes, Carmel. So how can you cue me to do what with my hips?
Maybe shorten your stance. Maybe bring your leg in a bit more.
What else can I help me? What helps to fold from my hips? If I've got my hips like this to you, and then I'm bending to the side. So I'm not folding from my hips. Why?
So your hips are squaring off. You need to let your hips go naturally with you.
I need to allow my hips to go natural. Now I can do hip flexion to come into triangle pose. And then still I can think of lengthening the ribs. So you were right there, Carmel. We just have to allow the back hip to roll forwards, allow the hips to be natural, to do more hip flexion, to come into a triangle where we can lengthen the sides of the waist. Okay. Make sense? Are those all the things you were thinking about when you were practicing?
Maybe.
Maybe. Let's give it a go. There's a lot going on with these poses. They're tough. Let's go from plank to get our correct stance. And then from your plank, slowly move into downward facing dog. Nice. Downward dogs are looking great, everyone. Very nice. Beautiful. Step your right foot forwards between your hands. Come up to standing facing the side of your mat. Look at your feet. Right foot is turned out 90 degrees, still pointing forwards. Back foot might turn in slightly or be parallel. Check, is your heel in line with the arch of your back foot? So you always got to start from the base and work your way up, okay? Bend into your right knee, come into warrior two. Is your knee stacked over your ankle? And can you bring your thigh parallel to the floor? So Raquel, you could be wider. Alicia, you could be maybe a touch wider. Yes, there you are. Now, back leg is straight. Press into your back foot. Lean your shoulders back to stack over your shoulders. Look down. Are your shoulders stacked over your hips? You sometimes just need to look and check. Arms out to the side. Look at your back arm. Is it in line with your shoulder? Look at your front hand and focus your drishti. Lunge deep into your warrior two. Go on, Amy, a little deeper. Yes, stunning. Now, press your right thigh out. Can you feel that external rotation of your right thigh, your right hip? Modified side angle. Bring your right forearm to your right thigh and sweep your left hand down towards the floor and then in line with your ear. Watch that bottom shoulder. So if you're going to press your forearm down, yes, so you don't sink in that shoulder. It's very sneaky. And then fully extend your top arm. Your top arm, extend your elbow joint. Be in side angle, Raquel, so bend your bottom knee if you're okay to. Side angle pose, yeah. Full version, fingertips to the ground. You may now want to re-sweep your top arm. Maybe you want to re-sweep that top arm in line with your ear. Yes, fingertips in line with your right ankle. So Sakile, bring your hand more in line with your ankle. Yes, there we are, beautiful. And then now top arm nice and straight there, Julie. Twist your ribs up towards the ceiling. Yes, twist, 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 twist. Check, is your knee still stacked over your ankle joint? Beautiful. Come up and straighten your arms and legs. Let's prepare for triangle. So front leg is now straight. Arms are still out to the side, Marlene. Hips are in a natural position. Reach towards the right. Allow your back hip to roll forwards with you. Yes. Bring your hand to either hover onto your shin or on the floor. Look down. Are your shoulders stacking over your bottom shin or are you leaning forwards? You may feel like you have to lean your shoulders back a little. Top arm straight up to the ceiling. Lengthen through the sides of your waist. Lengthen your spine. And now twist your chest open. Twist your chest open. Yes, so that the arms are stacked on top of one another. Beautiful triangles. That's looking amazing. Inhale, come up. And then you can windmill your arms back into downward facing dog. Beautiful. That looked really good from what I was seeing. Let's feel that on the other side. Left foot steps forwards. Ground the back heel. Check, is your heel in line with the arch of your back foot? Inhale, come up. Bend your left knee to stack knee over ankle. Check, are your legs wider enough? You might have to shuffle a little bit. Press into your back foot. Keep your back legs strong, straight, and active. Arms out to the sides. Look down. Are your shoulders stacked over your hips? Good. Are your arms out to the sides? Check in with your back hand. Check in with your front hand. Gaze over your front hand. Focus your drishti. Stunning, nice poses. Move into modified side angle. Bring your elbow to your thigh and sweep your top hand down to the floor and then in line with your ear and fully extend that top arm with your palm facing down to the floor. Make sure not to sink into your bottom shoulder. Press your bottom elbow down into your thigh. Twist chest open. Nice poses. Ooh. Now let's bring left fingertips to the ground. Flat hand tends to drop the chest. Fingertips keeps the chest lifted. You may want to re-sweep the top arm. Twist your chest up towards the ceiling and fully extend that top hand, and top arm rather. Arm over in line with the ear. Feel that side angle pose. We're looking for that diagonal. So Raquel, bring your arm over in line with your ear. Sweep the arm down. Okay. Yes, and in line with the ear. You've got it. Let's prepare for triangle. Inhale, come up. Nice poses, everyone. The legs stay the same as we reach towards the left. Allow the hips to be natural. Your right hip is going to roll forwards a little bit towards the floor. Allow for that so that you can move into hip flexion. Good. Now lengthen through the bottom side of your waist. Twist your chest open. And then you may need to lean your shoulders back a little bit so your shoulders are stacked over that bottom shin. Wrap both shoulders back and down. Go on twisting the chest open. Yes, stunning everyone. Inhale, come up and windmill your arms back into downward facing dog. Fabulous. And then you can lower and release. Well done. Okay, well, that looked pretty amazing from where I was sitting. How did that feel? Looks very different from last weekend. Any questions on those three poses? So I'm going to be very fussy when it comes to those poses in your assessment because we teach them a lot when we teach beginners. Okay, they're the foundational poses. So we want to demonstrate them and look really punchy and look really amazing, which you all are looking already. So that's exciting. So I need to see that you can get yourself into that amazing pose like you've just done without my instructions not reminding you about anything. Okay. So if you forgot anything there, make notes. Anything you felt was really helpful. Oh, I forgot that point. Make notes to remind yourself so when you practice, you check all those points. And always a good reminder to start from your feet and move your way up through the body. And a good way to instruct for your students as well. So you're not talking about the head and then the toe and then the arm and then the hip, that you kind of work through the body. I'll stop talking. Any questions? You guys look good. Very, very good. I'm very happy with that. Okay, I'm skipping through to the most important balancing poses because I know it's Friday night. Yay, Sarah says they feel 100% better than last week. They look 100% better as well. Like, look really good. It's the wider feet, I tell you, it makes all the difference in the world, and the natural hips. And just boom, everything falls into place. And if your feet were narrow and your hips are trying to face forwards, it's just disastrous. So everything, it's just, oh, yeah. If the foundation is there, then your pose just has space to open up. Okay, so we're going to do Warrior 3 again. Last one for the night. I won't make you hold it for too long. I want to do half moon pose and our dancer's pose. Okay, just to recap those big balancing poses. And especially because I didn't hit record the last week, so maybe they weren't on your recordings for you to recap. I'm sorry about that. So we'll cover that now. Okay, so Warrior 3. What is the tip? When you come into Warrior 3 from high lunge, what can I do with my bottom leg to help me get all the bits in place?
Slightly bend it.
Slight bend in the knee. So you're in like a little bit of a lunge. helps enormously. And if your hamstrings are a little bit tight, keep it a little bit bent because you'll get a nice straight horizontal warrior 3. Okay, so quick refresher, not that you need it because we did a whole class for it, but as we come into warrior 3, I don't mind what arm version you choose in your assessment. So if you want to come in with hands in prayer, keep the bottom leg bent, make sure your hips are pointing down towards the floor, squeeze the back leg up, okay? And back leg, it must be straight. Another big thing I see in warrior 3 is the chest does this. What's happening in my chest?
Collapsing.
It's collapsing. Okay, so remember the chest in warrior 3, if your arms are, especially if your arms are in airplane or prayer, it feels like you're in cobra. It feels like a little bit of a back bend of your shoulder blades drawing down in together. It feels like a halfway lift, like we were talking with Julie earlier, okay? Your chest is super active. Chest is lifting when the arms are back, okay? Back leg straight, chest lifted, and then maybe you extend those arms forwards, maybe you straighten the knee, okay? So let's give it a go. You already know what we're looking for. I'm going to check your back leg is straight and your chest is lifted most of all. And I know you're going to check your hips are parallel. So from plank, slowly moving into downward dog. Stepping the right foot forwards between your hands, come into high lunge. As you step, look forwards. Is my knee stacked over my ankle? Inhale, arms up. It's like a little check for yourself. Good. Sit nice and deep. And now be upright in your high lunge. Let's just see a good high lunge. Nice. Reaching up through the sides of the body. Now bring hands to the center of your chest. Let's just take it easy. Lean your chest forwards. But don't drop your chest. Squeeze your shoulder blades together, broaden your collarbones. You can hop in or step straight into warrior 3. Bend your bottom leg. Bend that bottom leg. Square your hips. Back leg straight. I don't mind if you want to flex your foot or front it, like the ball of the foot pushing away. Keep your chest lifted. Back leg strong and straight. Candace, lift your back leg a little higher. Yes. And then if you like, arms extend forwards or into an aeroplane. Nicole, extend your back leg. Stretch your back leg. Stretch your back leg. Yes. Push the heel away from you. Beautiful. That's it. Back leg strong, straight, and active. Carmel, turn your palms to face your thighs and lift your arms up a bit higher as they move back into shoulder extension. Yes. Big step back. Ground your hands back into downward facing dog. Well done. Make sure that back leg is straight as possible. Okay. Let's go to the other side. Stepping left foot forwards for high lunge. Check as you step. Is my knee stacked over my ankle? Good. Then inhale, arms up. Prepare to move into warrior 3. Bring hands to heart center or aeroplane your arms. I'm going to leave this as a personal preference for you. Lean forwards, but keep your chest lifted. Squeeze your shoulder blades together. Broaden your collarbones. Nice. Back leg strong and straight as you lift the back leg up. Exaggerate the extension of your back knee here. Yes, Nicole, there's much better on this side. Keep your chest lifted. And if you want full version, arm extends forwards. If that is like really nasty and horrible, you don't have to, but why not? You all look great. One more breath. Big step back. Back into downward dog. Dasha, watch your chest wanted to drop a little bit there towards the end. Remember to keep that sense of, it's like you're in a little back bend, like a baby back bend. Okay, well done. Come to a little child's pose or kneeling, whatever you need to after that. I know it's quite a tiring pose. Any questions on that? Main points there, I will be checking. Back leg straight, chest not dropping. And I know you're all super aware of your hips being parallel.
How long do we have to hold it?
Hey, Dasha.
Say, how long do we have to hold it?
As long as you can. And work towards like 3 breaths in a pose. Yeah. I mean, you'll be in smaller groups. So I check all of you in the pose. But work to about 3 breaths is good. You'll practice this and get more refined and you'll be totally fine. Nicole.
I just wanted to find out, I found with my right leg, I kept wanting to drop and I couldn't straighten my leg. But then on my left side, I was very confident and I could.
I saw that.
Yeah, and I don't know why. Do you think I'm doing something wrong?
I think it might be your bottom leg, because it's a lot of hamstring strength and flexibility of the bottom leg. So when your right leg was in front, I think your left leg's stronger.
Oh, okay.
So I think it'll come with practice. I think it'll just get stronger because your bottom leg is doing what in Warrior 3? The hip is doing? It's one or the other, flexion or extension?
Flexion.
Flexion. The bottom leg is doing flexion. And when my hip does flexion, what muscles are stretching in my bottom leg?
Hamstrings.
Hamstrings, yes. But how are they contracting as well as they're stretching? Because my arms are forwards, my hamstrings are stretching and? Eccentrically stretching. I mean, contracting. Yes, Kamal, you've got it. So, Nicole, I think that strength in a lengthened state is maybe something that your left leg is stronger in than your right. Because it's tough.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it all unfolds. Now that you're aware of it, video yourself when you practice, all of you. It's such a useful tip. And then you can see what's going on. Or turn on your Zoom thingy and practice with a camera. You can even record yourself and then play it back. And it's very, very helpful to start to just notice things you would correct in yourself and then for other people as well. Okay. Any other questions with Warrior 3?
I think South Africans have a stronger right leg because if they have an automatic car, you're pressing on the pedal.
This is true. We're always on the accelerator. So next we'll be doing half moon pose. Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. So what is the difference in half moon pose? I've turned to the side, so it's brought in another joint component. What is happening in my bottom leg?
External rotation.
External rotation, absolutely. Okay. So in half moon pose, my bottom leg, my hip is doing two things. What is it doing?
External rotation as well.
Same as triangle. Yes, what was that, Dasha?
External rotation as well.
External rotation, yes, you're so right. And it's also doing what?
Flexion.
Flexion, absolutely. Okay. Does that make sense? It's exactly like triangle pose, but balancing on one foot. Okay. So, what is the key to half moon pose? There's something that's like make or break.
Is it where your hand is placed?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. If your hand, where should your hand be placed?
Behind the foot.
Behind you. So slightly to the back. Okay? And then underneath the shoulder. If your block is in front of you, it's going to make you do a very skew half moon pose. If your hand is slightly out to the side, so here's my foot, here's my block, it helps you to get a beautifully straight half moon pose, helps to open your chest and also helps your balance. It is the key to this pose, okay? So, in my half moon, I come from triangle pose because I have hip flexion and external rotation and my legs are straight just like half moon, okay? I bend my right knee, hand can come onto the hip, as a reminder to keep the chest open, okay? I bring my block out to the side, and I'm going to need to move it quite far forwards. So my block and my hand is directly underneath my shoulder and slightly out to the side, okay? Then I'm lifting my back leg, okay? I'm turning my chest to the side, and then once I've got my balance, extending the top arm up, okay? And I can put quite a bit of weight on this bottom hand, or once I've got my balance, I can feel that I'm not using it too much, okay? To come out of the pose, bend this knee. Remember, Kelly, you asked about this. Bend that knee, and then it's a little bit of strength to step out of the pose, okay? The hand placement is the key. All right, so remember to pop that arm a little bit out to the side, and then bring your block forwards enough that your arm is under your shoulder. Let's go. From plank. Slowly moving into downward facing dog. Step your right foot forwards between your hands. Open up and come into triangle pose. So come up to standing facing the side. Okay. Begin to move into triangle, reaching to the right. Coming into your triangle pose. Lean shoulders back to stack over the shin. Okay. Bring your top hand to your hip as a reminder to keep your chest open. Anna, allow your hips to be more natural there in your triangle. Your hips are pointing to me. Turn your hips more to face towards the floor. Yes. Can you now lengthen your bottom rib more? Can you feel that? Okay. Bend your right knee. Slide your right hand forwards and a little bit out to the side. Okay. Step onto your right foot. Then you may have to move your block forwards again. Sometimes it doesn't transition quite exactly how you want it to. Then once you're there, open your chest, lift your back leg up, and extend your top arm up to the ceiling. Marlene, twist your chest open a little bit more. What tends to happen is we throw our arm back, so it feels like we're twisting, but we need to turn the ribs to the side. Yes, that's better, Marlene. And lift your back leg higher. I know it can go higher. Yes, beautiful. Take a breath. Now bend your bottom knee. Big lunge. Big step back. Better step, Rokella. Nice. And then wiggle your arms back to downward dog. Okie dokie. Nice. To the other side. Left foot steps forwards. Open up to the side, preparing for triangle. Inhale, come up. Exhale, natural hips. Anna, let your hips turn on slightly forwards on it. Yes, Anna, you got it. Reaching to the left. I know, it's so hard to break that habit. And now look how you can lengthen the bottom waist more in your triangle pose. Bend your bottom knee. Slide your left hand forwards and slightly back, whether you're using a block or not. When you're ready, prepare to move into your half moon pose. Check your bottom hand. Is it slightly back? Turn your chest up to the ceiling. So hand on the hip is a nice way just to get that shoulder back. Lift your back leg up. Twist your chest to the front. Sakile, you can bring your bottom hand a little bit more forward so it's under your shoulder. Yes, perfect, perfect, perfect. And then open up. That's it, Amy. Twist your chest towards the side. Beautiful. Big step back, slow, big lunge. Yes, and then windmill arms back into downward facing dog. Well done. Can you feel when your hand is placed in the right place, it really helps with the balance. And then you have more time to think about the chest opening and the back leg lifting. So it just needs to become automatic. That is the key to the pose. Remember the bottom hand placement. Sarah?
Sorry, Laura, can I just ask, your leg out, your working leg, the one out to the side, is that pointed or flexed?
So whatever feels good for you, Sarah, what I would say is in between. So a floint, I know it sounds like a silly word, but what you're going to do with your foot is you're not going to flex, it's not quite pointed. I'm pointing my ankle, but I'm flexing my toes.
I think we're so used to pointing some of us.
So give it a go. Everybody, you can give it a go. So you kind of, your ankle is pointing, but pull your toes back. And you can feel this. It kind of gives a nice kind of feeling of both. So it's active like a flex and it's extended like a point. It's a little bit of both. It's your personal preference, Sarah. I like the floint. I use floint even in Warrior 3 sometimes. It feels really great when you're upside down to floint, but whichever feels best for you. You can flex, you can point, you can floint, whatever really works for you is perfect.
Thank you.
I'm a lover of the floint because then you can have it all. Any other questions with your half moon pose? It's looking good. Okay, our last one for the evening is our dancer's pose. Okay, so in dancers, this is a little bit more of a back bend. So can you all see your dancer's picture? My bottom hip is doing what in dancer's pose? Hip?
Flexion.
Flexion, correct. When I do hip flexion, it means my hamstrings are stretching or contracting.
Stretching.
Stretching, correct. Okay. My back leg, what is my hip doing in dancer's pose?
Extension.
Extension, absolutely. And my knee is doing?
Flexion.
Flexion. When my hip goes into extension and my knee bends into flexion, my hamstring muscle is stretching or contracting?
Contracting.
Contracting, yes, absolutely. Okay. Slowly making sense. And if you're not sure, you just feel it, right? And your body will tell you exactly what's happening. So the arm moving back here, how do I take my hand back for dancer's pose? So if I'm in Tadasana, my palms facing forwards.
You externally rotate the shoulder.
Correct. So an external rotation, and a nice way to cue is thumb up towards the ceiling. Okay? You just taking the shoulder back into extension. Externally rotating, thumb pointing up towards the ceiling. I take my hip into extension and I bend my knee into flexion. My hamstring and my glutes are contracting. Then I'm going to take hold of my foot and then I don't have to contract as much because my hand's holding the foot. Okay, so first remember with this one, I want to create the back bend. So I'm going to start kicking my foot into my hand, keeping a lift in the chest, kicking my foot into my hand, and then trying to lift my toes as high as possible. Then from here, I'm going to move into hip flexion and lean forwards in my dancer's pose. Okay, to come up, I squeeze my thighs together and release. The most important thing here, I don't want you leaning forwards without kicking the back leg up. I would rather you stay upright like this and get the shape of the pose, then drop the chest and not have the action of the back leg. Okay, so let's just kick foot into hand and then that's beautiful enough. Maybe then move into dances. Okay, last pose of the night. Let's go, stand in Tadasana. palms facing forwards. Let's shift your weight on your right foot. Extend your left arm back with your thumb pointing up to the ceiling. Take your left leg back into hip extension. Of course, you would never cue like this in a yoga class, right? People think you're mad. Bend your left knee, hip, knee flexion. Can you feel contraction of your hamstring? Then take hold of your foot. Reach your right arm up into shoulder flexion. Good. Now here, just stay upright. Kick your foot into your hand and see how high you can lift your back thigh. Just stay upright and kick your back leg up as high as possible. This is a beautiful expression of the pose. See how high you can get your back leg. This is the most important part. Okay, and then keep your back leg high. It's all about the back leg. Maybe lean forwards or stay exactly as you are and go on lifting the back leg. Kick toes up to the ceiling now. Toes up, toes up, toes up, toes up, thigh up, thigh up, thigh up. Make it about the back leg. Now to come up, squeeze your thighs together. Work with strength to draw you in. Nice control there, Alicia and Marlene. Beautiful. And shake it out. Whew. Okay, it's about the back leg. It's not about the lean forwards. It's about the kick up.
Can you open your hips, Laura?
Yes, Dasha. Allow your hips to open a little bit because it makes your back leg go higher, just like standing splits. Okay, let's go. Other side. Shift your weight into your left foot. Extend your right arm back. Thumb up to the ceiling. Take hold of the inside arch of your right foot. So you're holding the inside of the foot. Dasha, watch you twisted your arm the other way now. Flip your grip. Thumb up to the ceiling. Yes, and hold the inside of your foot up, up. Keep your palm facing me and hold the inside of your foot. Ah, you got the wrong hold there, Dasha. We're going to kick foot into hand, start moving into the pose. Dasha, turn your hand the other way.
But then my thumb.
Yes, like that. Thumb up to the ceiling, to me.
Yeah. But then I can't hold on the inside.
You should be able to. You can. We'll talk about it now. Kick your foot up, kick your foot up, kick your foot up, and then make it about the back leg. Yes, little lean forwards. Focus drishti for balance. Keep lifting the toes, lifting the toes, lifting the toes. Allow the hips to open a little bit to lift the back leg higher. Other way, Dash. Yeah, I'll help you now. And then squeeze thighs together to come back. It's a common thing that happens because it's confusing. So Dasha there, because you're now holding your arm has gone into internal rotation. So work with me quick, Dasha. So Tadasana, turn your palm out, thumb up to the ceiling. Yes, now don't move your arm. Bring it down a little bit so I can see it. Yes.
Okay, I see.
Ah, you got it.
Thanks.
You've got it. So this is a big thing. If you hold with your thumbs down, your shoulder can't go very high into shoulder extension because now you're internally rotating. Feel it. Feel what I'm talking about? So if you, instead of having your thumb up, turn your thumb down and take your arm back. Now you want to hold your foot with load, so it's weighted, and then try take it up. It doesn't go up very high, right? But if your thumb is pointing up to the ceiling, oh, I can move a lot more. Okay, Dasha, well done for getting that. It's confusing. Okie dokie, well done, everyone. Their poses are looking great. Make notes of those most important components of the poses. We will recap again, don't you worry. And I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you so much.
Have a fabulous evening. Well done.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Rest and relax and pace your bodies, please, especially if you have anything tweaky going on. Well done.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.